And again, I don't ever claim to be the best, but me, I love energy. I love putting energy into a project, and I will put a ton of time into a project, oftentimes even more than maybe I even budgeted for, because I want to make sure that it sounds as good as possible. You got to put the time into it. You got to put the time into it. Make sure that you are working on anybody's project that you possibly think is inspiring to you, and work on it.
What's up, everybody? It's the Poorly Edited Podcast, the show where we put a spotlight on some of the most creative minds we can find, as best as a couple college kids can do.
Not very well.
I thought I missed my cue there, I'll be honest.
We're here coming at you live from WXLV, the X, on LTRC's main campus. I'm Chandler Davis.
My name is Coffee Guy.
My name's Patrick Lilly.
We got Josh Brennan on the camera. Lizzie Cates sitting next to Pat for no reason.
Why are you here now?
I just want to be included.
And we got a very special guest, fashion icon, Scott Tice.
Hey, what's up, guys? What's going on,
How you
guys?
doing?
Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for taking the time out of your day to
Oh, man.
waste an hour coming down here to talk to us.
And a half.
This actually
half.
gives my wife a break, so she was really happy that I was here, because I've been driving everybody nuts this summer, so this is awesome.
That's what it's all
Thank you.
about.
Yes.
How has your summer been?
It's been crazy. I know you guys have seen
I've
some.
seen a little bit here and there.
Yeah. You've seen some
But maybe a
pics.
lot of it,
Yeah.
if one might say.
The folks watching this, if you want to be Facebook friends, you will see how awesome my summer has been. It's been really good.
I'll look at your pictures and I'll just go, I think I'm doing my summer wrong.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, I think I need to
we've
pick up the pace a
Really
little bit.
screwed up this summer.
Yeah, 100%.
It's
Yeah.
a wash at this point. It might as well
Yeah.
be like fall again.
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you don't see me next semester, then apparently I was doing my summer wrong. Administration's like, no, you can't come back. I'm just not going to have you back, man.
So you're a professor at LTRC that I think the majority of this room had at one point or another. Zach still is in your classes because he's never graduating. So,
And I'm okay with that. I'm all right, because I love having that guy in my class.
Make more classes, I'll keep taking them.
Yeah.
Can you just do that? You just make classes?
We'll just recycle them. We'll call them something different. Put like the in the the or something.
Just like, I just need one person to sign up. We're teaching the class, and every time
Yeah,
it's
yeah, it's Zach. Zach is the only reason why I continue to work full time. No. Yeah, I'm down with that.
So I think all of us initially meet you as an educator and later find out you do a lot more than just that. But I think off the bat, I'd like to hear a little bit about your perspective being an educator for LTRC and why you chose to become a professor.
That's an awesome question. It came down to, I actually, when I graduated from school, I ended up opening up a recording studio. So I before that, I got a gig as an editor for a news station, and I did that, and I really liked it.
Video editing?
For video editing.
That's awesome.
And audio, and it was awesome. But I decided to just kind of take the bull by the horns, jump in, open up a recording studio. And so I did that since 2007. So I was doing that for a while. And as I was running the studio, I realized how much I love teaching when I would have artists come in, and we were all like a fam. Usually every one of my artists that would come in, we were very close for the most part. And I would always find myself teaching them or just kind of showcasing things as they were in. And I love doing that. I probably did that my whole life, just really enjoyed that. I was always like the VCR guy for the family. Scotty, can you come over? My VCR doesn't work. So that shows how old I am compared to you guys, because you guys are like VCR.
I've seen
watching
VCRs. I like
I've seen a VCR before.
very consumer radio. What is that?
I have a full wall of just VHS.
She does.
Heck yeah. All
100%.
right. Nice. Yeah, I still have a lot of my blank VHS tapes that, like, whenever you want to tape a show, you had to put a piece of
dude.
tape over on the back of it.
Yeah.
And I just remember, like, a bunch of times taping over somebody's show that you weren't supposed to.
Yes.
Usually it was like my dad's porn or something, but it was just always something. He was like, "No, it's my porn, son." But it's just like, VHS was always like a big staple in our house for that.
Absolutely.
So,
Same.
A lot of fun.
Yeah, I grew up watching VHS tapes all the time and recording all the TV shows.
Yes.
Family Guy and Lost.
That was
everything.
DVR back in the day.
Yeah.
When we were kids, that was our DVR. Now it's like, you have Netflix and Hulu.
Way easier.
But you guys remember though when we had Netflix, like when you actually would get them in the mail.
You can still do that.
Which is so. I wonder what percentage, actually gets them shipped to the house. It's
0.
probably just old people.
Yeah,
Probably.
100%.
I think there's actually some movies you can't get
That's true.
on the service, but you can get
They'll
mailed
take
to
them
you.
off streaming,
Okay.
but you can still order them physical,
Oh,
which
okay,
seems
okay.
somehow more work. Like, I don't understand why it's that. It should be flipped, because like, wouldn't it make more sense for it to
Probably
be?
because Netflix is like, we can just have them forever, and they put that in the contract, and then no one read it because they're like, who's gonna still mail stuff to people?
Okay,
So
yeah.
Netflix just owns the rights to DVDs.
Yeah,
That's true. No one's renegotiating that.
But you
contract.
talk to some people and they're just like, they just look at you like, wait a second, that would get shipped in the mail. I'd be like, yeah, kid. And also like I would tell them about the days of Columbia House, like when you would get CDs shipped in the mail for a penny.
And we're not talking Amazon Prime shipping. We're talking like
We're talking Columbia
5 to
House.
8 business
Yeah.
days or something.
Yeah, exactly. It would take 15 days just to get your AC/DC CD for a penny. And you're like, wow, I got this awesome CD, AC/DC, whatever, but it would be a penny. And you're like, wow, I just beat the system, not realizing that all of your credit information, and they had you for the next 10 years. Like my mom would just continue to get CDs in the mail. And every now and then I would throw one in that she likes just so that she wouldn't, it just appease her a little bit. Scott, I love Barbara Streisand. Thank you. This is great. And I would never get in trouble. So it's awesome.
So you, back to your roots.
Yeah, where did that go?
You ran into somebody who still works here, and that's how you got your gig at Ultra C.
Yes.
You told me that story. Why don't you tell
That's
that?
actually the real, the main reason. That's when I really fell in love with it. When I always had the passion for it, but one of my colleagues here, Wendy Barron, who's also a friend of mine, close friend. I love Wendy. And I owe her a lot for, just doing this gig. It's so cool. But she gave me a shot. I was running the studio and we were at some function and doing something. Shout out to Wendy Barron. I don't know how it started, but, they offered me to teach, a class just to see how it goes. Cause I had all the experience and the education background and all that. So I figured I'd give it a shot, try it out, see what it's like to, kind of get my feet wet with it. And honestly, guys, I think it was just the first class. I fell in love with it. Like, just fell in love with it. I knew that was my shtick. That's what I wanted to do. Just the energy between you and, the folks that are in front of you. It's the coolest thing. It's rad. So yeah, that's kind of how it started. I just knew that's, kind of the direction I want to go to. And in regards to the studio, I did this thing where I was balancing classes, so I was starting to teach a lot more. So after that first semester, I started teaching 2-3 classes, and then I had to kind of balance the studio life, which was still full time at that point. And then eventually it just ended up being, a seesaw where I was doing the studio less and teaching more. And one isn't better than the other. It was just kind of what I ended up really, aiming towards.
Was that hard to do though? Because we didn't talk about it yet, but the studio stuff was clearly something you loved. Was it hard to give that up?
It was tough. It was like it's like, when summer vacation's over and you get that depression.
Yeah.
I always think of it as like when you go to Disney World. Like every time I go to Disney World, it's something in the air. Like you just go to Disney World and you're like, I feel so good. Like you're just so happy. And then when you get home, you're like, I hate my life. It's just like, you just feel miserable as soon as, because everything is just, you're soaked in happiness.
Like no mice have come up and hugged me today.
Yeah. Like what? There's no characters here except for myself and, my child. It was just,
I'm scared of both of them.
Yeah. You should be. It was just kind of like a weird transition, because the studio and running a studio, that was always my dream job. That was always something I always wanted to do. I guess, when I was in high school, and I started getting into audio production, and then when I started teaching, I kind of had like these 2 girlfriends I had to choose from. Like which one, which one had the bigger boobs, that sort of thing. So I had to really kind of, figure out, which one I was going to go with. But I really enjoy the teaching, the most. That's just where I kind of scaled everything back from there, and it's just awesome. Hopefully, I still have a job after this podcast.
This is just a lot of evidence against you.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, that'll be good. Yeah. My wife is like, I heard your podcast. Why do you say those things, Scott? It's like, I don't have a filter. I don't know what to do.
So I think that a major different, like there's a lot of educators I think that everyone's had over the course of their lives, but there's probably just a handful of the ones that made such an impression because of how passionate they were about the work that they did in teaching and actually, taking that very seriously, what they're imprinting on, the people coming up. And you're definitely on that, list for sure, because it's so evident both on and off in and out of the classroom that how seriously you take it and how much you love it, how much you love educating. And
dude, thank you, man.
You know what I mean?
That's awesome. That's like the coolest thing that a guy could hear right there. It's awesome.
Well, it's so easy to tell. And I've had the professors that are so not, it's clearly they've checked out, at some point or another. And I think you lose a little bit there, because if you're not excited about what you're learning about, like, I love music and I love, everything in that field. And to be able to have a professor that loves it as much as I feel like I love it is really important. You know what I mean? I
agree.
Because if there's that disconnect, it's like, how am I going to learn? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you hit it on the head. First, thanks. You just made my day. Like, I'm honored to be here, and especially because I've had the pleasure of having you all, and that feeling's mutual. Like, it seriously, because the one thing I always say is I get bored quick. I don't know if we've all met. I have a pretty short attention span. Like, my attention span is probably worse than that can of soda there. We can't tell you which one it is because we're not sponsored by that.
Sponsored. Not yet.
But like if I get bored, like I know it's just gonna spew on to everybody else. Like, I want to make sure that I feel inspired the whole time, because then I know hopefully everyone else will as well. And it's just fun. It's one of those things where that's the big thing. Just always having energy. And
how do you do that though? How are you up? Because that's the man.
Yeah, you get days where, like, you open the car door and you hit the car next to you and you're like, wow, this day sucks. Not that it happened in the parking lot here or anything. Just outside.
Well, hopefully not, because that's only our cars out there. Yeah. So you've made an enemy with someone.
He's between Zach and Pat.
Oh. Yeah, it's both. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's one of you guys. Whichever one had the windows down. So
it's the sickest whip in the lot. Yeah. That's how you know it's Tice's car.
Yeah, right. The one that has all of the banana peels on the ground.
That's still in there?
Yeah.
That's been in there for like 2 semesters, dude.
Yeah. So some of you may have had the privilege of going into my car, not to steer away from this, but my car.
I don't know if you want to give any context away.
Yeah. This might have an analogy to it. I don't know. But my car is literally lived in during the semester, because I travel between schools and I teach, up to sometimes 10 courses.
Because you teach at another college.
Yeah.
You teach at 2 colleges.
Yeah. So there are at least, 5 banana peels in my car probably right now. And it's just, it ends up being lived in. And whenever I have someone in, the whole feeling of being embarrassed, that went out the window. Now I just have people go in. It's like, just you can step on that. That's fine, but
don't slip.
Watch.
Be careful.
Don't slip.
Yeah, watch. Watch the actual funnel cake that's in the front seat. Just try to save that if you can.
So it's probably the potassium is, I think, what.
Yeah, I'm great. Yeah,
that energy.
That really is it. Yeah, just eat enough bananas. No, you're right though. So one of the things that's tough is making sure that you are constantly feeling like on your game, but it's like that with students too. Think about it, like as a student, I've been there, I plan on, going back, for my doctorate and things like that. So you can't have a bad day. You're working, you are doing you're doing a buttload of classes and everything. And it's tough to stay focused sometimes. So you just kind of have to check it, out the door. But I've been there, I've even had, situations in classes, like if I took other classes where, you kind of see things that you maybe don't want to do, so those help. I've had classes before where, for my various degrees, and I would never mention names or anything, but someone might, be like, well, I might say something and I always just think, well, I'm going to make sure that I just don't do that. I try to avoid those situations. And anytime there's a bad situation, that always helps. To me, I always feel like that's like a learning experience where someone might be the first to complain about something. Me, I soak it in. I'm like, all right, I know I should try to avoid that. So when I'm teaching a class, maybe I don't do that. And then there's tons of times where I see someone doing something. I'm like, oh, I love that idea. I'm going to do that. So you kind of get this mutant, this Frankenstein of different, things from various people that you can do and you may not want to do. So it's pretty cool.
Do you think it comes down to like,
we gotta get a break quick.
Oh,
I'm
no.
sorry.
Pat,
I know.
we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, that happened way too late. We're back, the Poorly Edited Podcast, live at WXLV. We're here with Scott Tice, fashion saint and professor here at XLV of not just audio, right?
But also dreams.
Dreams.
Professor
yes.
of dreams. You teach a lot of art classes as well.
I do. Yeah. I teach a lot of art classes, ranging from illustration, animation, 3D modeling. I'm like a mutt here, man. I teach it's fun. Yeah. Just like from before, I get bored easily. So it's nice. It's never the same thing. It's always something different. And it keeps you going. It's cool. Although there are times I've had semesters where I'm like, wait, what day is this? Wait, what classes am I teaching? Even Zach, like I've gone in before. I'm like, is this my audio class? Zach's like, yes, it's my audio. It's your audio class. You're good. So yeah, it's really fun. It's cool. And the best part about that too, just to kind of feed off of that, is you kind of have this expanded palette of things that you do. So what's nice about that is you open your door for so many opportunities. I mean, you've heard me say that before, where you have, never try not to decline anything that you can do, so the more opportunities you have, the more experience you gain, the more, doors open, of course, financially it's good, it gives you more opportunities that way as well. So it's a good thing.
So when I first took your classes with Chandler also, I had no idea what I was signing up for at all. And one of the things that was so pleasantly surprising, and I remember we talked about this, was just how hands-on it was. I've had similar experiences to that, but how did you reach that conclusion that was going to be the best way to go about this?
That's an awesome question. I one of the toughest things is, I think if I was just,
was that hard to get the okay on necessarily?
No, I don't know. It just kind of, I think everybody wants hands-on, I think most principals, administrators, whether you're in high school or college, even, K through 12, secondary type of ed, I think hands-on is good. In our field though, hands-on is awesome because you got to one up, compared to other students, and I think that's how it should be. Everything should be hands-on. Every week there should be hands-on because you retain all that information more. You get the experience. So before you even get into the field, you already got it down. Mm-hmm. You already have the experience, and you feel more confident and positive in regards to that. And I think that's what's cool.
I don't think I've ever had a professor or an instructor at any level that at the end of the day, I felt that I was more prepared to enter the field than when I left your classes.
Dude, Zach, man, thanks.
Yeah, 100%.
Seriously. You guys, your money's out in the.
I was actually going to say,
he went a little off script there, though. Was that all right?
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, no, that was worded well.
Okay.
Well, that's part of the thing that I love too about this institution here a lot is that most of the professors here, the educators here, they didn't just go to college to teach this. They did it first, and now they're coming back, and they're going to talk about, you know what I mean? And that's for you. I mean, you had your own studio before you started talking, you know what I mean? And you did it before you started teaching. And I think that's really important. That's a huge delineation that you don't get, I feel like, as much in a lot of other colleges for a lot of fields.
I agree. And that's, one thing I should add, we're really blessed here with my colleagues and also the professors, the other professors that you all have. I mean, that's really a philosophy that a lot of us have. And I think that's awesome. It's a great school. And, I mentioned Wendy Barron, and we have other, amazing professors that are really hands-on. with the things that are happening here. And that's important. And, Wendy was in the field,
Yeah.
she did amazing things with her prior experience. I mean, we can get into all of that, but, I think you hit it on the head. It really does help having those past experiences. My mom, she would always, tell me how running the studio prior to teaching was really a feather in my cap because I kind of went in on it. I opened up that studio not having a lick of any business experience, which that's probably one regret I have, where I would have liked to have had more knowledge in that area, especially when it comes to keeping track of, how to keep track of finances properly. Luckily, my wife is awesome and she kept track of those types of things for me. So she kept me organized. If I only had like a miniature version of her everywhere else, I would be great. But I learned a lot just from the things that she would ask me every year. But getting back to that, you're right. You guys are right, because it's so cool being able to share the really cool things that I figured out or that I learned or that I've done. And it's awesome to be able to share the not so great things that happened in the field. And those things will happen. Like
all the time.
All the time. Yeah, totally. All the time. And that's what's so fun. I love just starting out a class, or you might ask a question and it's like, yeah, you know what? This is probably something what not to do. And I love being able to just, have a portion of the class where you talk about things to avoid, because you don't always get that. You don't always get someone, to be able to share those negative experiences as well. And that helps. It really does. Because there's some things I had to learn the hard way, whether it's, in the form of contracts or if it's in the form of, specific projects of, maybe I should have did things a certain way versus another way. And you learn that, and that's what's really neat. And the longer that you do it for, you really become comfortable with it. And so it's really neat to be able to share that with people, those experiences, because, things aren't perfect. And if you screw up, you learn from it and then you're better from it. If you continue to screw up, well, then, that's on you. But, when you actually get those experiences and you can make yourself better from something like that, it's awesome. And then if you could do the same for someone else, even better. So yeah, I think you really made a good point with that.
And I think keeping it real is important, to be like, it's not always going to be perfect. You're not always going to be in the ideal situations, and that's fine. It's going to be fine to make mistakes because you're not going to be a master at first. That's important to imprint on, because I think it's really easy if you're not aware of how common it's going to be to face those obstacles, that it's all right. And you just got to learn how to navigate it. Like it's like part of it as much as all the other things are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Don't stress. Never stress.
How do you stay?
It is so easy to stress.
How do you stay so cool, though?
Well,
you especially too. Like, cool as a cucumber. It doesn't matter what goes wrong in class. Like, what messes up. Like, you're always so chill.
I have my uncool moments when I'm at home. So that's so when I'm like once class starts, I'm like, oh man, this is my your haven there. But
how do you do it in the studio when you got a client in there who's paying probably by the hour and something goes wrong?
And it will all the time. If you're in a project studio situation, it's going to happen every session, every day. Totally. I could give you a good experience, and he won't care if I give a shout out. A good friend of mine who has an amazing band. He's an amazing artist, James Supra. He's awesome at blues. I mean, this guy is awesome. And his band, when he was in the James Supra band, when they were at my studio recording, this was years back, maybe in maybe 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. And they are just so phenomenal, as a lot of the artists that I've recorded. They're so tight, so prepared, that we had a live recording session that we were doing. We had artists in different rooms. So I had some people in the live room, some people in the vocal booths, things like that. And so everyone was reliant on headphones. Well, it just turned out that this was just one of those Murphy Law days where things just don't always go right. And one of my headphone distribution amps ended up, I think in the middle of the session, just cutting in and out. And at the end, I eventually figured out what the issue was, like when everyone was home and I was able to troubleshoot it. But you don't always have the time to do that. And so you have a couple options. You can flip out or get upset, and then that's going to then spew onto your artist, and then they're going to start stressing. Or you could just say, well, we're going to all go home at the end of the day, knock on wood. You know what I mean? We're going to go home and the session will be over. We're going to have fun. Let's just have fun regardless. And if you just stay cool and just take a moment and say, you know what, guys, let's see if I can, plug something else in, a different amp, a different headphone amp, or whatever device might be the issue. See if we can fix it or replace it real quick. You guys just take a moment. This hour is on me. If you're good to your artists and you make sure that they're calm the whole time, then everything's going to be smooth. And they were so tight in this situation that they didn't even need that. They were able to perform even with the headphones dropping in and out. They always knew where they were in the song. That's how tight they were.
Wow.
And it's not the most ideal way. And me personally, I would prefer to not even continue to use that device, but they were so fun and so collected with it. And I think they saw how calm the situation really was, that it's not even a big deal, and it could be even worse. You could have an artist coming from New York. And I've had artists come from the city, from Philly, New York. And if you have an issue somewhere, something is a problem, well, what do? Do you get upset? Oh my God, my studio sucks. Or, do you try to figure out a solution? You don't send anyone home because they already drove pretty far. You make it work. You figure it all out. And that's the cool thing. Same thing in class. We've had plenty of classes where we might have to troubleshoot something. And it's a blast, because oftentimes those classes are the ones where you learn the most, because we're all in it together trying to figure out how to troubleshoot something. And even though that wasn't planned, we now have an experience where we have to try to troubleshoot. Maybe something's wired wrong. Maybe someone that was in previously, maybe there was an issue and we didn't know. It could be anything. And to be able to, as a class, come together and come up with, number one, a solution for that specific gear, but also come up with other solutions as, okay, well, what if we can't fix this? What can we do? And now everybody can kind of come together and think of ideas. And to be honest with you, and this will come up, I'm sure, again, I learned a ton from you guys, man. You guys come up with suggestions where I'm like, you know what? That's a great idea. I'm going to use that. It's a two-way street. You know what I mean? Like, where I learn a ton from you guys, and I'm cooler because of you guys.
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to the hands-on learning thing. If it wasn't for that, you wouldn't have been in that situation.
Yeah.
That importance of being cool. I mean, the person who's running that session really has to make sure that the vibe is right. With your ability to be able to do that in the studio, is that something that you had to kind of like learn or sort of get better at over time? Or did you just have that going in, like you knew how important that was?
I think a little bit of both. When I opened up the studio in 2007, man, I just went in on it. And I have family to thank for that, because they believed in me when I, got out of college and I was, building up my portfolio with artists and doing project studio type stuff. So I was, really blessed to be able to be in that situation. So I went in not knowing a lot of stuff. I don't mean audio-wise. Audio, that's like a forte that I've really tried to, build up since high school. But it's just one of those things where you don't know what you're always getting into. That's why I always say shadow studio engineers. Just get them coffee, wash their cars, rub their feet, whatever you need to do, and make sure, it's a true story. I may have rubbed a couple feet. I'm kidding. I have. But make sure you are in that mode, because when you're around artists, it changes everything. It's so cool. And just being there, seeing how things are wired, hearing how things sound, getting that mode, the smell of the studio, minus the farts and all that stuff. Like, that's how you learn. That's really what you learn from that. And then really comes down to, don't take yourself too seriously. Whether you're in class, whether you're a student or a teacher or an instructor, don't take yourself too seriously. So when you're in a recording studio and you're with artists, have fun, laugh. It's all about humor. Just have fun.
On that note, we're going to be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Relevant, a location-based mobile network personalized by your interests. Customize your news feed to consolidate all the information you care about all in one place to quickly and easily find what's relevant to you. Find out what's going on in your local area and reach your community from the palm of your hand. Relevant is available on iOS and coming soon to Android. Be the first to know with Relevant.
What? Hi, we're back recording a podcast.
Nice.
Here with Scott Tice,
Scott Tice.
famed professor of LTRIC.
How you doing?
Did you have something?
No,
you
absolutely
wanted to
not.
Okay, so I can go into something.
Take it away. Sure.
Okay. So I had a question.
Fine.
So say I'm in my bedroom and I have a guitar,
Whoa, I don't like where this is going. I don't like where this. I'm kidding.
fully clothed,
All right.
in my bedroom with a guitar. And I put some chords together and I sing over it. I got some lyrics. So now I have a song technically, like it's there.
Technically.
Well, what is like the process like for me then if I wanted to be like to the end product where it's like studio version of it? Like what's the process like?
Even if it's vaguely in
Yeah.
terms of mindset or like how do you, because I think that's a big thing too. I mean, for me still to this day, every time I go to make a song, it's like getting myself in the headspace of like, how do I mentally get to the point of finishing the song and putting it out? Because I'm so scared of so many different parts of the process and messing things up or what people are going to think or whatever, like that's crazy.
Totally. And man, I get those days all the time. Like I always, especially if I'm doing production for another artist, oftentimes you'll get in your head like this like snippet in your head. It's just like, a snippet of something that you want to add. Or let's get back to writing your own song, Fully Clothed. Okay. So
It's actually the name of my song too.
a big
It's
part
Fully
of it.
Clothed.
Fully clothed, baby. I got my clothes on for you, girl. Sometimes like you have to you kind of just, I think oftentimes pressure, getting back to the pressure, the stress of it. I hear so many times people like, I have this idea for a song, I just don't know where to go with it. Well, the first thing that usually happens, and again, I enjoy production. That's one of my favorite things to do, writing especially. But instrumentation isn't always my forte, but my ears are. So I like to, hear things specifically. Don't stress out or put too much pressure on it. Oftentimes people are like, got to have this song done now, or I got this idea in my head, playing guitar. I don't know where to go next with it. Just kind of, sit back with it and just really just enjoy the process. It's tough sometimes when you have deadlines because that always kind of ruins the creative process. And we can always talk about that in a little bit. Deadlines are crucial. But if you're just in your own space and you're just writing, creating something, enjoy that process and don't put pressure on yourself when it comes to the lyrics or the rest of the rhythm section. Just kind of go from there because oftentimes as you are writing and you are producing, it will come. It's just sometimes you just might not be as excited or in that mode just yet. So for me personally, like when I'm writing something, I will go over the same sections over and over again and continue to produce and write. Not that that's the right or wrong way to do it. That's just normally how I do it because I need to be excited and interested the whole time. So I want to make sure that if I'm not feeling it just yet, I'm going to just kind of vibe into it for a while, just kind of soak into it. No pressure. I'm not going to put any pressure on myself to get the song done just yet or to have lyrics, figured out in an hour. Just kind of just go off in the mode. And sometimes my wife, she'll just hear me play the same parts of a song over and over again. And it drives everyone in the house crazy, but that's how I work. I love to soak in that. And I'm just kind of vibing to specific sections. Like a broken record. And I'm okay with that. Where other people, have their different ways of producing or writing. And I do as well, but I tend to, work that way. No pressure, no stress. And then I end up hitting it. I just hit it, whether it's good to other people or not. I've hit it in my head that I've nailed it. And that usually helps. But again, everyone's mileage is going to vary for that. In the case of like, if you're just writing on a guitar, sometimes it helps getting an outside ear, having your friends or like a friend come over and be like, listen, I got this idea for a song. What are your thoughts? Because sometimes you get so blocked up, blocked up. That would be me. I get world's greatest fighter. Yeah. I get like, sometimes you just get stuck in that mode where you just need another pair of ears. Just get another pair of ears just to listen to your idea. And then oftentimes they have a great suggestion and then it moves forward. Collaboration, without a doubt, is key. If you collaborate with someone, you can move forward. It helps. If it's just you, kind of figuring out a song on guitar and lyrics, maybe you have a snippet of something. Sometimes you don't always have, the ideas or maybe even the experience or the know-how for a certain part of the song. and you can always get there from someone else. So
I always just get too close to the project, and Chandler and Pat know, like, I'll send them stuff all the time, mixes that I'm working on. I'm like, how's this sound? They'll be like, that snare's way too loud, dude. I'm
Oh
like,
my
yeah,
God.
of course it is. Like, what?
oh
Yeah, and as soon as you say something about it, you listen to it again, and you're like, oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like, what
Absolutely.
where was I?
and that's the thing. Like
That's so hard, though. I have
It
such
is.
a problem with that, either being too, like, in my own head about it or just otherwise. It's how, and I've asked you this before, but like, how do you get around that?
that's tough. And you could be doing this for 20 years,
Yeah.
you know, and which I know you will. You'll be doing this for a long time.
Wow.
You're always gonna. No, seriously. Like,
Oh, no, I am.
yeah, you
I
are.
am.
No, I have no
'Cause
doubt.
I don't know if he has 20
absolutely.
years.
Well, I
We-
might
we
not have 20 years.
Listen, if
He's getting up there.
I will be 45
Yeah,
in 20
well, yeah.
years.
There you go. Hey,
That
well, I'll
hurts.
be. Oh gosh, I'll be.
You don't have to say it if you don't want to. I think it might help
be
start the
26.
healing
I'm
process.
just thinking about my baby at home. She could be out of college. It's so sad. I love
Wow.
you, girl. I love you. But like, it's a tough thing it's a tough thing to get out. Yeah, no, she'll. Yeah, I don't know where. I can't do math. Apparently, that's not my forte.
I just can't believe they're going to play this clip of that at her wedding now. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to be.
I just love you, baby. I love you, girl. It's just it's tough because you get really close to projects, whether that's someone else's project or your own, because you're in that mode. It's like your own little world.
Yeah.
So like you're in this like side scrolling world where you go left and right, you know, maybe up and down, but you know, the depth of it all is oftentimes where someone else can come into play. Like you get just kind of stuck in certain moments of that. That's why I always tell you guys, take a break from a project, take a break
Yeah.
from a song, because you're listening to something over and over again. You get so close to it that your ears become stagnant, become stale.
Can we talk about that? Because
Absolutely.
audio is so weird like that.
Absolutely.
There's nothing else out there that's like that, where if you listen to something too long, it's just you're useless. Where does that come from? Like, what have your experiences been with that like? Because it just took me by such surprise when I started getting into this. It's totally different from anything else you'll ever do.
It's true. Like you become mush. Like I have a saying, I can't say it. It's probably not appropriate. I won't, but maybe I will. I don't know. But anyway, your ears get mushy.
Yeah.
They get saggy. Okay. That's as close as I'm getting to where I'm going with it. Okay. And what ends up happening when you're listening to something over and over again, everything just becomes really dull. Like you can't really pick out certain things anymore because, you kind of get these biased ears that are very, very bored. You know what I
Right.
mean? And that becomes a problem too. And this happens with visual too. So,
I agree.
My folks that are doing the visual game, video editing and digital
100%.
media and graphics, you have to look away from the screen. So if I'm ever editing anything or I'm working with students in class, I always say, okay, take a break, look away from the screen. Don't check email, don't do anything, because the colors that you are seeing on the screen tend to, become oversaturated as you are looking. Your eyes become stale as well. So that happens the same way that way. So taking breaks, taking rest, and just take a moment and do something else. You could even do another project.
Yeah.
So even if it's another audio or visual project, you could do that. It's just not that project. So now you get a fresh pair of ears or eyes on the next one. You could also do this where, like Zach, if I'm working with you, man, I could be doing a mix and then I'll send you my mix and just say, hey, Zach, what do you think of this? I do that with artists too. So if I'm working with a band, I'll send them a pass of something and they'll send me notes back. And that's a good thing. When you don't get notes, then there's an issue where it's like, well, then you're dealing with an artist that maybe doesn't care.
Right.
So getting notes from them is kind of like your way of getting a fresh pair of ears and be like, yeah, you know what, Chandler, like the snare is up too high. Maybe I should, fix that. And I have good friends that have been in the industry for a while, and they'll always tell you that that'll never change. You're always going to make sure you could know your room as best as possible. You could know your gear. And you can know the projects at hand and your clients and all that, but you can always go overboard or always ruin a project. You ever have those times where you're working on a track or even a video project and you're working on it so long that you end up actually going backwards.
Oh yeah, dude.
End up going
For sure.
backwards.
I was sick a couple weeks ago and my sinuses were messed up. I'm like, I know I shouldn't mix, but I just wanted to do it. So I did it. And then the next day I was fine. I'm like, what have I done? Like, this is, none of this sounds good at all.
It's like you have a blanket, a thick comforter
Yeah.
over your ears. And when you get back, you're like, wow, I put way too much treble, too much high end. The higher frequencies are destroyed in the song because you were compensating for maybe blocked ears, for sinus issues. And that goes with your eyes too. If you have a headache, then your digital design skills are compromised. It goes both ways. Same thing with doing a radio broadcast, anything. If your energy isn't there,
Yeah, like right now.
and then it just brings it. You guys are doing great, man. You guys are doing awesome.
What about Pat?
I wanted to sleep with my eyes open, actually. It's helped a lot.
Well, that says something about me, apparently. Oh, what are you saying?
No, I've been locked on your
Do I make
glasses.
you fall asleep now?
No, dude, my eyes have been locked on your glasses this entire
The whole
time.
time. It gives you something to look like.
Yeah, it's the most
focus on.
most colorful
100%.
thing in this room by far.
I know they can be distracted. I wear big glasses, so it takes the attention off the other parts of my face. So that
Like, I wouldn't be able to do it. Like, if you mugged me or something and the police asked what you looked like, no idea. Glasses.
You just
though.
draw a picture of the yellow glasses.
It's just big giant glasses.
Yeah.
Like,
So a pair of glasses mugged you, and I'm like, that's all I know, officer. I'm sorry.
Mr. Tice.
I cringed.
It's
Even when like people are like, professor, I'm like, just call me.
really even
call me.
professor gets you.
Well, I don't know. I just
Doesn't that feed the ego at all?
No, not
Sensei. The sensei okay?
Sensei.
Yeah, it's Sensei Tice. I don't know. I mean, everyone has an ego, but like when it comes to that, like I honestly, like when we're in class, I feel like we're all like I'm just kind of sitting down with you or doing something. I don't think of it honestly any other way, as you know what I mean. It doesn't feel like that.
Real man of the people.
Yeah, I am
100%.
the people's professor. Yes. Yeah.
Well, I think it's so apparent listening to you. It's so apparent that you're an artist, I think, and you were an artist first. Everything else really comes from that and pulls from that. But my interest, because I know how busy you are, I know how much you have going on. I think one burning question I have is that how do you find that work-life balance? How do you find the time to, and listening to you talk about the art even, I mean, you have the teaching that you do at 2 different colleges. You have a family now, and you have a studio that you mix from, but you're also still an artist at heart that I would imagine still wants to do stuff for you at the end of the day too. And how do you balance all those things and find that fulfillment at the end of the day?
Something usually takes a small hit. You know what I mean? That's the toughest part. You know, I think what takes the hit, if I had to order them,
Don't get yourself in trouble.
yeah, it's my wife and my kid are always on the top. But my wife would even be able to tell you, like especially when I was running the studio full time before I even got into the teaching gig full time. You got to be lucky to make sure you're surrounded by people that support you too. Because man, I give her props, and also my friends and family too, because it can get really busy, really, really busy. But that's like that with any job, any gig, it. I mean, you guys are doing professional stuff, with video production and audio, like, the deal, what that's like. So you got to balance. And to be honest, that's one thing that's probably the hardest part for me is balance. The whole organization of all that is balance without a doubt. And anybody could tell. I mean, you guys would even know. Like, that's something that I always try to improve on is balance and organization. And something usually takes a hit. In that regards, it's probably the writing, doing any personal projects. Yeah. I sometimes, if I just need a moment to get like a Zen state, just to kind of get back into my roots, and I start to write, man, I'm on fire. I'm hitting it, especially with fresh ears. You always like kill it. You always nail it that first night. But then I always tend to fall into a trap, or then I just get so busy that I have to put stuff aside. Mm-hmm. So that's something that I would say always try to, balance. What I've been doing lately is, and I know this is kind of weird, but I've been working out like a list system, because I'm very easily to forget things. So I've been jotting down things to make sure that I have a priority list of things that I know I need to do, whether that's family, friends, and then also, career, job wise. Try to make sure I put a little bit of time into those things, but that's hard. That probably takes the biggest hit, doing any personal type stuff.
That's crazy.
All right, we gotta go to a break real quick, but we'll be right back.
Right back.
What's up, everybody? We're back at the Poilated Podcast here with Scott Tice. So let's say so I wrote the song Fully Clothed. I got some other people interested. I got a full band now.
Now, what
You did it
style?
all,
What style is this? Is it hip hop, rock,
Let's just do punk,
R&B?
'cause that's the only thing I listen to
Vaporwave.
anyway.
Fully cloud. Okay, I
So-
got you. I feel it.
But now we're like, so we booked studio time. What should we do going into it to maximize that studio time to get the most out of the song and just like to get the most out of the sound engineer?
Now there's a question,
good
Pat.
That's a great question.
question.
And I've been on both sides of that too. And it's a little bit different when you're running the session and you're the artist. But it goes both ways. But when you are going into a studio, be prepared. I have seen this, quite a few times where an artist or a band will come in and maybe, some of the members are prepared and then some aren't. But make sure whoever is recording that day is on point, prepared. Make sure they're rehearsed. They have, the timing down. They practice their singing, whatever it is. Make sure they are prepared. I think it goes way. I mean, you could do a full day of talking about being prepared in regards to that. Making sure that all the equipment works ahead of time. I've seen that where guitars, the pickups are, they're screwed up, they're loose, or that they are, they're just noisy. A singer comes in and isn't prepared, and you have to really work with it. I am not there to, I would hope that most people aren't there to just soak up money or to try to get paid as much as. I mean, you always want to get paid as much as possible, but you don't want to be like, well,
For the right reasons.
yeah, tick, 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 tick. Okay. I'm making that money. I'm making. You want to make sure everyone feels comfortable. If they're rushed, if the artist comes in, they're rushed, and they're constantly looking at the clock. That's another thing that's tough too. That comes into a problem, where now that's going to end up being so much more detrimental.
The timing of it all.
Yeah,
hitting
the
that down.
timing.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, if you see, and if you're like, this is affecting what do you do? I mean, do you just kind of let it be?
You have to mediate that. So you have to sit back, and just oversee things. I've been in situations where, I've had a singer in the booth, and you could clearly see that they're prepared, but they might be a little nervous. And you always want to try to make sure you are always sincere. Be as sincere as possible. Make sure that they feel comfortable, and every take that they're doing, know that they are really getting close. And that helps. If you notice that they can't calm the nerve, sometimes you notice that they don't get it when the record is when you're recording, or if they know that people are watching. So you kind of have to assess that. What are ways to make people feel comfortable? Do you need to get some people out of the room? Is there laughing in the background? That's the other issue too. Humor is huge. But if a vocalist is, let's say the booth is here, the booth is here, and it's a really small booth, but and then the artists that are just listening in the control room, if there's eye contact and there's a lot of laughing going on in the control room, that can throw off, the other artists, because they might get a little self-conscious on that. So there's a lot of different ways of mending that. I've been in situations where artists were quarreling, and you have to really know how to, step in, and you are never a part of it, but you are just kind of like an outside, mediator. And it's great because it works on your people skills too. When you are in a room full of people and everyone has their own personalities, and they're all, they're all unique, which is great. But sometimes if things aren't working out well, you have to kind of assess that. And then when it comes to the time, if someone's running out of time or they feel rushed, like let's say that you have an hour left in your session, but you have a lot to do. That's when you have to step back and you just have to say, listen, let's just take this clock off right now. Let's just make this work. Let's get this done. I'm not there to, in fact, sometimes I'm not always a big fan of doing hourly, sometimes per project, but you got to be careful with that too. So it goes both ways, but you just have to sit back and say, you know what, Bobby, don't worry, or Jimmy, any name can fill in right there. Don't worry.
Could you do a couple more?
Cindy, Rebecca.
Okay. I'm there now. Okay. Thank you.
Peter. Okay. So you just have to make sure at the clock, just their clock inside, it's just turned off. You just want to nail it, because that ends up being more work for you then, especially editing. I think probably one of our least favorite things oftentimes as an engineer, or really anybody in the digital world here, is editing. Editing can get tedious. So the more editing that you have to do, it makes it not very fun. Now you could, of course, soak your artist up for all the editing time. That you need to decide that. But if it's editing that isn't fun and enjoyable for you, I would prefer to not have to do it, even if it means that I'm not getting a percentage of that because I'm not doing it. You could always make someone else do it too that has fresh ears that can help. But
so as someone who's on the other end of that so much more now, I'm sure you've been on the artist side, as you said, a lot too. But now you know from both worlds. Is there any advice you can give to the incoming, to the artists? Maybe they might be doing their first studio gig.
Oh, yeah.
What are some things that in your head, like it's that they might be sweating, but maybe is fine? Just any advice like that.
Yeah, it's always nerve-wracking. It's kind of like a race. Like I love running, and whenever there's like a race, like a half marathon or whatever, your nerves are always like on that morning. Like I poop 2 times before any race. Like I just like, and then when I'm running, I'm like, oh, I just pooped out all my liquids. Like, you got to make sure that you're not, nervous going in, because what's going to happen is you're going to do fine. You're going to do great. And if you don't, or if you have issues in certain areas, just know that you can always go back. You want to work with somebody that's understanding of that. You don't want to work with somebody that you feel rushed. No way. You don't ever want to feel rushed, or work with someone that just is like looks like they're not enjoying it. It's kind of like what we were talking about with the whole teaching aspect of it. Work with someone that's fun.
So you think it's real, even before you book that studio time, it's important to find that person who's the right fit.
Bingo.
For the whole thing.
Do your homework, because they should do their homework too. So when you work with someone, you want to work with an engineer or a producer, whoever, writer, anyone that is going to do their work with you. So they're going to learn more about you. I want someone to learn more about me and my song. I want them to be prepared as well. I want them to have ideas ahead of time. So that's why I always say, if I'm working with someone, send me your track, even if it's rough. It could be a basement track, anything like that. It gives me some ideas of what I am going to work with then. So then I can jot down some ideas of what might be some problematic areas. What are some things that I need to focus on? And that's tough, to do. But the same thing applies. Do your homework on the engineer. I mean, I would think most people would, when it comes to anyone that you work with creatively. You want to know what you're working with, like a wedding photographer or a wedding videographer. You want to know that they're fun and energetic. So all this stupid stuff that I'm going to do with my wife, I don't want a videographer that's like, okay, just go over to that rock over there and do that thing that you wanted to do. You know what I mean? I want to be able to, have someone that can keep up with us.
But I think a problem that is a hang up, especially for a lot of artists up and coming, is they might not have a lot of money to shell out for the person that they do feel the vibe with. And they might settle for the person where it's not as much there, and they might take a more cookie cutter approach, but it's cheaper. So how do you
that's tough.
Make that call,
You can always see if you can work something out with the engineer, and sometimes you might be, your plate might be too full. You ever go to a buffet and you just load it up and you realize that you don't want to eat all those wontons or something? Like, you want to make sure that if you have a song that you're doing, start with one song. Start with one song or one video, whatever it is, and start from there. Oftentimes people will have this whole mindset of doing a whole album or even an EP all at once. And if you just do one song at a time, like an a la carte type thing, that could be more manageable, especially now. We have all this digital distribution now, which that's a whole nother story, however you feel about that. But things are done differently now, where you can do things at a per song basis and make things work. Like, you can really make things more manageable. And then if, let's say, and things are more affordable now too, if you are having trouble finding the budget to work with that person, if you really like working with them, maybe you can work out a plan. Work out a plan with them. I've done that before, where you do things installments. Some people might feel otherwise about that, and that's completely cool. It depends on the artist. Who, if I really like them or I've worked with them before, that's all different. But you want to make sure that you're working with them, getting a good sense of of a plan on that. So if you have to wait a little bit to be able to work with that artist or that engineer, it's worth it. You want to do that. Definitely want to do that.
So those are things like upcoming musicians want to keep in mind. What about things that upcoming engineers maybe aren't doing correctly or should be doing? Because I mean, I feel like there's like 1,000 wannabe engineers for every studio out there. So how do they need to set themselves apart to get that job? Or how are like new studios needing to set themselves apart
And how
in
did
order to
you
stick
do
out?
it?
Yeah.
That was me. Yeah, absolutely. That was me. And there's still projects where that still can be you. Like there's still times where you're working on a project and it might be maybe a different genre than you might have done. And you kind of have to, reset your ears. You don't want to just be stuck on maybe metal or hard rock or rap. You want to be able to work on everything, like gospel or R&B, hip hop, rock, heavy metal. All that should work. In regards to up and coming engineers, and again, I don't ever claim to be the best, but me, I love energy. I love putting energy into a project, and I will put a ton of time into a project, oftentimes even more than maybe I even budgeted for, because I want to make sure that it sounds as good as possible. You got to put the time into it. You got to put the time into it. Make sure that you are working on anybody's project that you possibly think is inspiring to you and work on it. Even if you're starting out, there's going to be times where, you may get paid, you may not. It just depends on where you are or if you're interning or shadowing. When I opened up my studio, prior to that was building up a lot of my portfolio on my own music, other people's music. It would be other businesses, audio and production, even the jobs that I've had. I took all that in and I networked with a buttload of people. You always network. And just constantly just doing work. I would look up stuff all the time. I would contact engineers and things like that. Like a good buddy of mine, Dan Mulch in East Stroudsburg. I consider him, a big part of why I started the studio in 2007. I shadowed him just more to just be in the moment, in that mode. And he was awesome when it came to just picking his brain. That's what you got to do. But you got to hone up and just constantly just hear things, listen to things. And when you are working on your music, and this could go for video or anything else, when you're working on your track, you want to make sure you are constantly listening and referencing to other people's music as well. Don't just go in there blind. Just like with 3D modeling that I do, you always want to have a reference, an image that you want to model off of, because it's oftentimes hard to do it off of from your head. That's inside your head. So when you do that, you're good to go. So you really want to make sure that you really study other people's music that you think sounds good. And as you're mixing, reference back and forth to it. Make sure though that you have the volume, the gain of both tracks even, because I'll be the first one to tell you that's going to throw you off. Let's say if one track is louder that you're trying to reference to, that louder track is always going to sound better because it's perceived loudness. It's louder, so we're going to think, yeah, man, that song, that's so cool. But then you find out when you put both tracks even at the same gain, the same volume as you would call it, then you realize, wow, I'm doing better than I thought. You know what I mean? So you want to make sure that you give yourself a fair shake too.
Unfortunately, it's about that time.
It's about that. It do be that time.
Oh man.
Unfortunately.
Oh man.
Yeah, right? It flew by.
I mean, I could always skip out on plans that I had with my family if you guys want.
Dude.
Yeah. I just want to see.
We're not worth it.
Yeah.
We're not worth it.
We could always take this to the Iron Pigs game I'm supposed to go to. Babe, I'm stuck on 22. If you're watching, though, I'm just messing around. I love you, babe.
He ended up not going to that game.
Yeah. If you're just watching this and listening to this, I'm actually out of the house. I have an apartment. It's things
been a
aren't-
rough week.
Yeah, things aren't going good. I'm living at Zach's house. It's not good.
It's
Yeah.
also just a 1-bedroom apartment, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not
Oh,
good.
right.
Yeah.
Not good. Not favorable conditions.
Yeah.
He's on the porch.
I continue to live out of my car with the banana peels.
It's a compact vehicle.
It
too.
really
I mean,
is.
how do you-
Yeah. It's great when you're
pretty
parallel parking, so you don't feel as bad. Normally I usually scrape the car that's aside of me or
course.
behind me. I mean, that's a thing, right?
Yeah, it's a given.
When I'm driving my Mini Cooper, I just feel like I'm not even there. I'm just like, it's like you're driving a car that is just invisible. It's awesome. It's so tiny, but it's so zippy, and you just clip things on, whatever you're hitting.
That just buffs right out.
Yeah. It's great. Like when you're driving, you drive in a small car. It's like a really cool, fast, smart car.
It is, yeah.
And you can just hit whatever, and it's like it never happened, man. You're good. It's awesome. It's good.
You're just bouncing off stuff.
You're
Like
like
the
a
bigger
pinball.
cars
It's
don't
like-
even notice.
You're just bouncing around. But then I was gonna say I don't even know where I'm going
Yeah,
anymore.
It's better that you don't.
Yeah, it's better.
Driving advice from Tice.
Yeah. Don't try to match my paint with any cars that might have been scraped out there. If you see any black paint, then
Scott
Might be
Tice will
mine.
be teaching the new driver's license course next semester.
Get your CDL here.
Yeah.
yes. You got a big truck. Come on, guys.
He's like, just hit it. It doesn't matter.
It's like you're gonna win.
yeah.
Stand a chance.
You're bigger than it.
It's just a transparent car. That's awesome.
So do you think you'd like to shout out? You'd like to abuse our platform for your personal gain or anything?
Oh man, I think
Anything at all.
I think I've abused it enough. Guys, this was fun. You guys have a great show. Really,
Well-
it's an honor. I've had the privilege of having you guys in my classes, and to see the work that you're doing is pretty awesome, pretty special.
Thanks so much.
You guys are pro, man. So just
let's
keep
chill.
yeah.
We're getting
Very
there,
much.
but
You guys are doing great.
No, I wasn't even just saying it before. I've never felt like I was more prepared than after I took your classes. So thank you.
Thank you. Seriously,
100%.
that's awesome. And like I mentioned before,
Helped me get an internship because they were like, do you know anything other than Premiere? And I was like, I know After Effects. And they were like, cool. And it set me
Awesome.
apart from everybody else.
yes, see, and that's what it's all about. Branching out and separating yourself from everybody. That's what I always say. Like, make sure that you are, doing something a little bit more, a little bit extra than might even be required. Even if it's like on a list of things, like if you're going for a job and you see the requirements and you have everything already locked in. But it's always good to know that extra stuff, because when they ask you, so what else do you know? And you throw that in, you got a feather in your cap. I'm telling you, it's great. And to be honest, I learn a lot from you guys. Like, even just with just conversations that we always have, it allows me to, come up with concepts like, wait a second, I can talk about that in class. We can do that.
Mhm.
Like, always network and listen with people. It's so cool. It'll never get old. And that's the thing. Once you stop, wanting to learn, like me, I've been doing this a while, but not nearly maybe as long as other teachers and professors. I want to constantly learn. And that's when you still love it, when you still want to, kind of learn and embrace new technologies and things that are out there. I think I'm going to skip the Iron Pigs game. I'm good. Babe, I'm sorry. I just gotta do it.
Well, Scott Tice, thanks so much for
Thank you guys,
dropping knowledge today
Drop in.
in here, dude. It's been amazing.
Thank you,
I've
guys.
been looking so forward to this podcast since you got scheduled. I know we all have, which is why it's a party in here.
It is.
But I really appreciate you coming out.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much. And thanks
awesome.
for helping us give us the tools to get this far. I don't know how much further we're going to get, but at least you got this far.
Oh man, always. And you can contact me anytime. I'm always around. I would do this again with you guys on any random topics at any time.
We might take you up on that.
You guys
might
do.
have to.
You guys do a great job. Very, very, very professional. So thank you guys.
Our intro music is by We're from Antarctica. They put out a new album. It's pretty
Yeah.
fresh. Check it out. And then our outro music's by Food Truck. So we'll see you next week.
Thanks for watching and listening, guys. Catch you later. Poorly Edited Podcast signing out.